This is where truth and vulnerability are put on the altar. Fear and failures are celebrated as they should be. And we unapologetically peel back all the layers. Welcome to Bare Naked Radio. It's time to get raw, real, and inspired with your host, Dawn Gluskin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bare Naked Radio. I am your host, Dawn Gluskin, and today I'm so excited to welcome Natalie Vartanian to the show. A mutual friend of ours connected us, and it feels already like we're like long lost soul sister. So we're going to have a great conversation today, and we're going to be talking about sex and mysticism and all kinds of good stuff. So say hello, Natalie.
Hello, everyone.
So excited to have you here. We're just having a really great conversation before the show, so really excited to share with you. So those of you that don't know Natalie, she is a certified life coach, a relationship expert, business strategist, writer, teacher, and all-around provocateur. Her biggest goal is for people to create life their way in whatever way turns them on. So Natalie's working on self-publishing her first book about her sexual escapades and revolutions. That's going to be very interesting. Looking forward to reading it. It'll be out later this year at the end of 2018. So yay! That's exciting. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So how we usually like to start the show is just with like a little bit of storytelling. So for those who aren't familiar with your work and who you are, if you could just give us a little bit of your background, like how did you get into the world of healing? And you do some tarot work, and of course, you know, sex becoming a big part of your message and how that book chose you. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I definitely went the route of high school, immediately go to college, start working during college, and had these like big plans for how I was going to make a lot of money and have a house. And, you know, I like to say I was fully bought into the American dream, even though that wasn't my soul. Right. My soul was always kind of rebellious and fascinated by mystical things and fairies and all of that kind of, I guess, otherworldly things, but very rooted in like our reality, especially in the United States. And so it just was, I don't know, I spent my 20s very much with the question of why am I here and what am I doing with my life, even though I had the good jobs and I had the great friends and even at some point I got the fiance and we bought a house together, and I was like an Insta mom because he had kids. So, you know, on paper, everything looked perfect in some ways. And not that it didn't have its struggles, but, you know, in a lot of ways, I was the epitome of success for a lot of people, you know, and I loved my partner, and there were things I enjoyed about my job and what I was doing, but I went to a leadership weekend, and it just kind of changed everything because it just had me clued into all of these dreams that I had for myself. I'm like, I'm not doing any of them. I'm not traveling the way that I always thought I was going to travel. I'm not writing. I'm not, my soul didn't feel free.
Yeah. And I think so many people can relate to that because it's like on the outside in, everything looks picture perfect. And then on the inside, though, there's this like longing, like there's something more. And then I don't know if this was your experience, but a lot of other people, it's like they almost feel bad for wanting more. It's like, why can't I just be happy? I have the perfect life. Other people would kill for this life. And like, but it's your soul, really.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like I should be like counting my lucky stars. I should be on my knees every night praying for this amazing life that I have. And then there's guilt with that, this guilt of why can't I just be happy with what I have?
Right. And
which is painful, right? It's a very painful, lonely place and shameful place to be, I think. Like talk about a taboo, like another taboo place of like, everything is good. What are you complaining about? You know, you shouldn't be complaining about your life. And so this kind of, for me, this leadership weekend just kind of blew everything open. And, shortly after, in my situation, I kind of had to blow up my life in order for it to change, because it was so rooted and deep in everything that I kind of didn't want for myself. And so I moved, I separated from my partner at the time. I started working from remote soon after. I looked into coaching and or even going back to school. I was just like, what do I want to do with my life that feels more me and more aligned and on purpose? Like, that I have a reason to be here that feels good for me. Like, that became my question. It was like a quest at that point.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to kind of burn it all down to get to that fertile ground that you can recreate yourself from. And, to your point, like a lot of people do feel that guilt when they have like the outside looking in, it looks so perfect. And then why can't I just be happy? But really what you need to know about that for anyone that's listening and going through that is what's happening is your soul is speaking to you, and your soul knows that you're here for a higher purpose and for another reason. And it's gently giving you that discomfort, giving you those feelings to lead you and to guide you, to have you get curious and say, okay, why am I not happy? And just start asking those questions, and guilt aside, but why am I not happy? And just start getting curious about that, which it sounds like you did, and then burn it all down.
Yeah. And it took a while to realize that even that place is not a bad place, because then I judged myself for being unhappy.
Right.
And I was just like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I always so sad? Or like unhappy or not fully happy.
Yeah. And our emotions really are it's just information. And it's just,
they're pointers. Yeah. They're just like, hello, hi, look at me.
I got something to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Be curious about me. They're like little kids, right? Like, they're just like pulling at your clothes until you just like turn around and you're like, oh, hey, hi, how's it going?
I love that metaphor. They're like, listen to me, Mom.
Right. And they get louder and louder and louder until, because sometimes it does. And I think we were talking about this earlier, right? The call, the voice. Sometimes it is just the faintest of whispers.
Yeah, it starts out that way.
And it does. It starts out that way. And when we become more attuned, we can hear them and act on them. But when we're not, it's like we have a bunch of like heavy duty earplugs, right? And so it has to get louder and louder and louder. And so, sometimes it does. It needs to
wake you up,
for us to pay attention and to wake up.
So your version of that was the feelings of not happy, an unsettled life. You went to your pivotal moment was going to that leadership training, and it woke something up in you, which is beautiful.
It does.
A lot of people will stay asleep. And even though they have those whispers and those things that are pointing, right? And sometimes we'll do our whole life that way. Like if we don't have the universal 2x4 over the head that wakes us up, we end up at our deathbed saying, I wish I had lived a life true to myself instead of the one others had wished for me. So we are the blessed and the lucky ones that have these sort of life altering experiences that wake us up while we're still here. So you had that.
Right. And mine had to be a life altering one, because actually something I realized as we were talking, Dawn, was that, I'm one of those people that was reading self-help books from when I was 18. Yeah. So it's not like I wasn't exposed to this stuff, but it's kind of different. Like I was ingesting it and definitely was doing small things in my life and thinking these questions and being aware, but I still found myself firmly in that groove of the kind of life that we're conditioned to live and not ask about. And so, I did need the 2x4. Yeah. I did need to go to this leadership training or this transformational weekend and have it all like in my face, so like neon bright that I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. And so what was it like deciding, to leave your relationship and your home and like, basically starting your whole life over? I'm sure it's scary, but like, how did you get through that?
It was super scary. Luckily at that time I had started to collect people that were really for me and for my happiness and for my dreams.
I love that collect. And I'm an awesome person collector too. It's great.
And I had, at that point, I had started doing that and even had that moment of having to do evaluation and kind of, I say this, but like cleaning house with even just the people in my life. Like, are they are they for me? Are they for my dreams? Are they going to encourage me? If I had a crazy thought, like I want to move to Northern California, are they going to say, yeah, fuck yeah, like you do
Yeah.
that and follow your dreams and I'll come visit you, versus why are you leaving me?
Right.
Like, wait,
Are you
I'm gonna be
crazy?
scared.
Or
Are you going to find a
you're gonna
job? Like,
fail? Yeah.
that's such a risk.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's true. And I still remember a conversation where I was talking with a friend about moving. Like, I don't know anyone up there. And she's like, Natalie, you do not have a hard time like meeting friends. Like, of course you're going to find friends. And she was just so encouraging
Yeah.
and loving with me that
That's
it was like healing.
keeper.
Yeah, it was really sweet. And I felt really blessed to have that. And so like, it was very, like, once I decided each of the things, it was very fast. When I decided about my relationship, it was probably like a week or two later. When I decided about moving, I was from SoCal to NorCal in about a month and a half. Like, it was very clear. The energy was very clear where it wanted
It's amazing
me to go, and I wasn't fighting it anymore.
how that happens once you decide on something, and like the universe conspires. I think that was I think from The Alchemist. Like once you take action, you make a decision, the whole universe conspires and works with you. It's like, okay, she made the decision, she listened to the sign, she's doing that. We're going to help her and we're going to support her, and it all starts to come together, and the fog kind of lifts a little.
Yeah, it does. It does. Like, it is a very magical, mystical place. And I think this is the part where it is hard to believe that that's true when you've never lived like that before. And I remember feeling like that of, isn't that really gonna show up if I jump? And like, everyone says this, but I mean, it's a lot of work to then have to pick up my life after I've fallen flat on my face. And there were just so many things. I'm just such a planner and a logistical person, and I want to make sure plans B, C, and D are in place like before it happens. And there's some merit to that, right? Like, just think about all of your options and do your homework and yeah, have some kind of contingency plans in place, but those then stop you a lot of times from even doing plan A, because you're so busy planning B, C, D, E, F, whatever.
Yeah. And from an energetic perspective too, it sends like a kind of confused mixed message out into the universe. It's like, okay, I'm all in, I'm going to do this, but in case it doesn't work, I got all these backup plans. It's like, well, do you want it to work or not? Because if you want it to work, put all of your energy into it working, right? And then like maybe have like a little backup plan in the back of your head. But you're right. If you're so rigid and have like all those plans of it not working, then it's probably not going to work, because that's what you created. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've fragmented ourselves, right? We are splitting our energy in that way. And it is hard to do a lot of things really well versus like a couple of things or one thing really, really well. And so just focusing that energy, and in that way I did have to burn that bridge. I was like, I'm moving. I'm not just like separating, and I'm not just leaving my job, but I'm moving,
recreating
I'm
your
gonna
whole life. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And kind of, and I have done the couple of times where I've moved and it's failed and I've had to come back. Like that's life. But I think with each time we do, that muscle gets stronger to make bold moves.
Yeah, and I think everything's serving always, even like a quote unquote failure.
True.
It could have felt like a failure in the moment, but I'm sure it taught you what you needed to know, or, unwrap something for you, or there's something that happened with each of those moves, even though it might have seemed like a failure on the surface. And that's also getting curious about our failures. It's like, okay, failure, what are you trying to tell me? Like, why did this work? And then you learn for the next time what you do like, what you don't like, what works, what doesn't, and you adjust.
And I think for me, I know that I value adventure and learning, in the sense that at least I tried. At least I'm not going to wonder later, what if I did make that move to Austin for the boyfriend? What if I, had actually gone after that coaching like career like I dreamed about, instead of sitting with those questions. Like, it's like, yeah, but I did it and I tried and I gave it my everything, and we decided to complete, and I don't have to have that regret for the rest of my
Yeah,
life.
at least you know, at least you tried, at least you're in action. I always, that's what I tell people, just get into action. Like, don't worry about if it's
Yes.
right or wrong, or just do something. Like, don't just stand there, like take some action. And there is no right or wrong. Just know that if you're moving, like all roads lead home sort of thing, but you have to be in motion.
Yeah.
You can't just stand in one spot. So once you're out there in action, things start happening. And I also wanted to come back to something you said earlier too, was that you had started reading the self-help books at age 18. And even though you had read them, you still, went through the struggle. But I felt like in you saying that, like there was little seeds being planted. And I'm pointing this out so people know that if you're doing the work and it doesn't feel like you're progressing or transforming or getting where you want to be, it's working on some level, even a subconscious level, because probably reading all those books starting at age 18 probably helps you build an awareness muscle that helped you say, okay, this is not the life I want. I need to take action and start it over. Where most people would just keep going and be unhappy, and that would turn into illness, and that would turn into depression and anger, and all these things. But you had some level of subconscious awareness that you're like, no, I need to do something drastic, right? That most people don't have that.
Oh yeah. Right, definitely. And I'm so grateful for that, because you're right. It becomes like fertile ground too for the seeds that you then want to plant, because we're working on the environment so that when the seeds get planted, they have the best chance of blooming and thriving, and or even just coming out of the ground, right? Whereas they probably would not have before, if we didn't have that awareness, if we didn't have those mindsets, if we didn't have that even belief that we could even try for it.
Yeah. And that fear of failing or not, being the wrong decision, or, I'm going to regret this. And I think most people just regret not trying, not versus, doing that crazy thing. Like, that the crazy thing always serves in the long run.
Yeah.
So if you had a client that you're working with right now in a similar situation, and they just come out and they're like, Natalie, I'm just from the outside in, everything looks amazing, but for some reason there's something inside of me that's not happy. And I'm just, my whole life, I'm questioning everything. Like, what do you tell them? Like, what do they do? Like, what kind of advice would you give? And for our listeners now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's been so many of my clients. Like, they're
we
like,
draw, right? The people,
like everything's like great on the outside, and it's good, and it's good, and
what's
like
really under there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, so much of my question at that point becomes, what part of you believes that you can't have the kind of life that you truly want?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And what is that life that you truly want? If you didn't have to worry about anybody else, if you didn't have to worry about disappointing anyone, if you didn't have to worry about hurting anyone or abandoning anyone, or right, like all of those places where we feel that our life is so tied to everybody else's life, like just untangle for a moment and give yourself this space to just, what would I want my life to look and feel like?
That's a great question to start with. Yeah. Because then you release all of those limiting beliefs, you release all of those stories, those judgments. It's like, if you are the creator of your reality, which by the way, you are, what would you create? That's such a good question to ponder with. So I know on this show, we always like to talk about, heartaches and struggles. So like with something that goes on in the world is a lot of times people put out their highlights reel, right? Because we just want people to like us and accept us, don't judge us, just put your best face on and go out and face the world. But, behind the scenes, we're all human. We've all had our share of heartache, quote unquote failures, all of that good stuff. But it's so inspiring to hear what other people have been through and how they have sort of coped with it. So what is something that's coming to mind for you that you've struggled with in your life and found a way to overcome?
I feel like there's several. I mean, for me, a lot of it has been around family, and again, my situation, like kind of that place of, my dad was kind of in and out of our lives growing up, and then he committed suicide when I was 9. And so it's been this place of thinking about, definitely has me wonder, why are we here? Why are we alive? You know, what has us live lives that we feel are happy and fulfilled and purposeful? What separates some people from just living and kind of sleepwalking and suffering, and others that and that choose, like, I just don't want to be here, you know, for whatever reason. Some souls just don't want to be here, and even to separate that from that a little bit, you know, it's been a long time for me to get to this place a little bit more, I guess, detached, you know, where I can look at it from his perspective or someone's perspective and not kind of have it deeply impact me. Because I feel a lot, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners, like, we're deeply empathic, right? Like, we feel people. If someone's around you that you can tell is sad, or you can tell is having a rough time, like, we feel it, you know? And so that's been a big lesson for me too. Even just this past weekend, I was at a workshop supporting men. And I was like, I just want to practice. What is it like for me to just be in my experience, in my body? Like, if I'm happy and someone around me is sad, can I maintain my happiness and still feel for their sadness? Can I do that?
Yeah. And that's really a superpower, to be able to do that, to be able to, you know, just be with whatever feelings come up, whether it's ours or other people, and not becoming so attached to them, not becoming, you know, falling down the rabbit hole, so to speak, but just being in the moment. And, you know, I'm hearing, you know, obviously what you dealt with as a 9-year-old is so traumatic, and I'm sure it's, you know, it showed up in a lot of places in your life, but it sounds like you were able to sort of turn that pain into power, in a sense, you know, being able to connect with people deeply, being able to savor the moments, to follow your passions. I think, you know, it's all in the higher good sense of the experience, you know, at least that is, do you see those as gifts that have come out of that experience?
Yeah, and this is why I'm so grateful for the kind of work that I do with people and that I have done with me. I mean, I definitely attend workshops, and I definitely go to therapy, and I definitely have coaches and, like, people to help me, guides to help me on this path and to help reframe a lot of this stuff. Because I mean, I could have been one of those people that became a drug addict and or was, like, you know, heavily medicated, or just was, you know, having a really, really kind of robotic life. Like, I could have been that. Given my circumstances, I definitely could have been that person. I've seen those people that, you know, weren't able to cope in some ways, or learn, or heal. And so I feel so grateful that I've been on that path, and I have those guides, and I can sit here now and feel into, wow, I'm so much more empathic of a person because of what happened growing up. I am much more of a kind of a cheerleader for people's most turned on lives because of what happened, because I saw what happened with my dad, who, you know, in a lot of ways I intuit that he was a tortured soul, that he was an artist that wasn't able to express, that he had so many dreams that he probably wanted to live that he couldn't.
And now that's
for whatever
fuel
reason.
for you as part of your life purpose, your mission, how you serve and help other people. And to your point too, it's not easy to do the work. I mean, doing the work, looking at our demons, like peeling back the layers, like getting to the root core of our trauma, and the you know, that's not easy. It's so much easier just to go and drink or do drugs, or, you know, have sex with strangers, or go shop, whatever it is. Like, we all have our coping and to just drown it out and to go numb. And there's no judgment, because we're just trying to deal the best we can. But to do the work, it's not the easiest thing, but it's so liberating and empowering on the other side. And then you get to turn around and help other people do the same thing. So it's kind of like the, you know, the self-fulfilling prophecy, or the, you know, the paradox of life, like how we teach what we need to know, and what we've mastered in our own life, and sort of our mess becomes our message, and that whole thing. And it's actually
Oh God, there was even a thing recently too where we were looking at kind of like some of our core wounds and how they are our greatest blessings. And they were really, you know, we were really talking about this thing of, like, your life is plan A. all the shitty things that happened to you wasn't the thing that detracted you from having the life you were supposed to have. That was the life you were supposed to
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is plan A, you know, and we're just kind of sitting with this place of what? You're telling me that my shitty experience of having my dad commit suicide was the plan,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, and when people hear
But
that, like some people don't get that. They're like, "What do you mean this horrible thing was supposed to happen?" But from a human level, it's hard to understand,
yeah,
like a human 3D
yeah,
level. But if you take it from a higher self level, and if you believe that you were incarnated into this human body for a reason, for your own evolution, for your own
yeah,
growth on a higher level, like you, everything that's happening to you is teaching you, is helping you to ascend, to grow into who you are, to remember who
mhm,
you are. And when you look at it from that level, it starts to make sense. And if that doesn't make sense right now, just sit with it and maybe it will. But yeah, it's crazy. It's like, again, the
yeah,
paradox of life. You're like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to
right.
suffer so I can feel like enlightenment. What? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how it
yeah. And
is.
I mean, and even just this place of realizing, you know, like for me growing up, didn't feel I didn't feel like people really like paid attention to me or
Mm,
my family really saw me. There was so much like chaos and trauma and drama in our household that in a lot of ways I felt very invisible.
yeah.
I felt like no one was like really paying attention or knew what was happening for me, you know, and tracking me and like loving on me. And so that has become my superpower.
Mm.
Like that is what I do with everyone. That's the biggest feedback that I get from people of like, Natalie, being around you, I feel like you so
You see
hear me
them,
and
you
get me and
feel, yeah,
understand me and right. And I'm like, and
it's a
I make
gift.
them feel like they're the most important person in the world in that moment. Like I'm so present with them. And it's because I didn't have that. And so I want everyone around me to feel that.
So that suffering
And
is
how would I know that that's so
serving.
important if I
Yeah.
didn't notice it from that lack place? Like,
Yeah. And
right.
everyone that's listening, your details of your life are different, but if you could just take that on, that your suffering can now be how you serve, right? When you go
Yeah.
through the healing process and you really come to terms with it, then it's such a power. You can come from a place of power and just help so many other people. But I wanted to talk about the book. So it's got you such a good title, Sexcapades. And we were talking about it a little earlier, and you're like, well, it's not like I chose to write this book. It kind of chose you. so, so
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that and what's it about and how did it choose you? And yeah, we want to know more.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the first iteration of the book was going to be just kind of the bigger memoir book. And I had a friend point out that most people do it the opposite way. They have the smaller books and then they write the big memoir
Right.
book. And in it was going to be the chapter on sex, as there was going to be a chapter on everything of love and relationships and money and God and all of the different areas of my life that I've been with and transformed and kind of the stories around them. But the more I whittled it down to what was kind of doable for me to write, I also realized this is the one area that I do have a lot to say
Mm.
and a lot that I've learned and a lot that I've explored for myself and also in connections with other people. I had a podcast around sex. I was that person that everyone came to talk about sex because I was that safe place. So I just realized, I mean, I do have a lot to say here. I have done a lot of my work here. I do feel very different where I can say that I feel turned on around sex where I couldn't say that before. I was so scared of it
Yeah.
growing up. I was just like, what is this thing? And I don't know what it is. And I don't know how to figure it out. And I'm scared of men and I'm scared of women. I'm just like, all of it felt just so far away from
So it's
me.
almost like part of your own healing is coming out with this book, and also because
Yeah.
you're like the one of the sacred rebels, and I think that's why we connected so instantly, right? Because
I like that. Sacred
sacred
rebel.
rebel.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's like we know that what's going on the planet right now is not like right. Like there's like this new paradigm coming through, and one of the taboos and the paradigms that's is sex. It's like such a taboo topic. You don't talk about it, and even in school today, they're like, we don't talk about that. We're just going to sweep it under the rug, and all the kids are getting addicted to porn and like they don't know like the sacred side of it. Like there's so much out there that it's just a hot mess, right? It's like
Yeah.
instead of like let's just talk about it for what it is and what it's supposed to be is something pleasurable and it's biological, and let's just be open about it, right? Then we wouldn't have all these deviant, behavior that comes up in a bad way. So I think it's good. I think more people need to be talking about it. And I grew up in a very Catholic household. So I was like one of those people that you don't talk about it. And so I lived that life. And then, so me too, I was like, had all these questions, and they even teach you what's wrong to think about it. And it's just,
right, exactly. And then they wonder why we're all just hot messes when it comes to sex. It's like, you guys,
natural thing.
right? You had us live in a vacuum, like in a black hole around it, and then any light that came in was bad around it. Oh, but this is the funny thing. We actually interviewed a friend of ours who's Mormon for my last podcast, for Sexcapades, and we were talking about how crazy it is that it's like sex is bad, sex is wrong, don't have attraction, don't have affection, don't have desire. It's like don't. Oh, but until you get married. Right. And then when you get married, that first night, you're just going to have sex that's going to blow your mind. And there's going to be stars and fireworks and like so much passion and desire. It's like, that's so traumatizing for people. You're going to go from off to on in one night. Right.
And it's probably not going to live up to your expectations because you don't know.
How many couples yes, have been traumatized because they got married, were virgins, and then all of this expectation and pressure, in addition to how bad and evil sex has been made their whole lives. And now you want us to just think that sex is the most holy, beautiful thing because it's with my husband.
Right. When it's been evil all along. Yeah. It's such a confusing message. Along. And then with kids are like starting like earlier and earlier these days, which is just blows my mind as a parent. I'm like, oh my gosh, but some of these kids, but it's because no one talks about it to them in a healthy way. So they go out on the internet and they find all these like the dark hole, that's like the darkest corners of the internet. That's where they're getting their sex education from. And it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder they're so messed up about it now. And it's just, no, and that's not the way to do it. Like, I have conversations with my children about it. My oldest daughter, who's 10, my youngest, she's 5. So we haven't really yet, but I tell her the good and the bad and the ugly, because I don't want her to go to the internet for her education.
Crazy. No, I hear that. And it's true. It is this interesting place of, like, we are so concerned about the information that they're going to get and how they're going to be that we don't say anything. But that's the thing. Then they're getting their information elsewhere.
They're forming these crazy beliefs and
Right. Yeah. So we can have influence on that if we are courageous enough to speak to it, because it is such a taboo thing. And so we do have to overcome our own taboo around, you don't talk about sex.
Yeah. 100%. So I love that you're taking a stand on that and you're putting all of your personal stuff out there, which it takes something. I know. And my whole platform is about being vulnerable and telling your stories. But sometimes it's like, it takes something to put yourself out there. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm telling people this. But it's also empowering and it's healing for yourself and for others. So I, for one, definitely look forward to reading it. So keep us posted on that.
Thanks.
And then, so the show, I love talking to you. We could talk forever, and the show always goes by so fast. I'm like, oh no,
I know.
I'm like, this is good, but it's the time of the show where we have to start winding down. And this is where I give you a chance to let all of our listeners know where they can connect with you, get more from you, learn about your book when it gets published, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So the best place to go is to my website. So you can access it via my name, natalievartanian.com, or thisturnedonlife.com. And so both will point you right to the website. And from there, you can find out about the book. There's a mailing list. If you want to get on the list to be the first to know when it comes out, you can do that. There's also to the top, an opt-in to get on the newsletter, just the general newsletter. And I have a freebie and opt-in gift for you around like living a turned on life and just like the steps to help kind of accomplish that. And there's more. There's blogs, writings, different ways we can work together, tarot, coaching, etc. but yeah, I would love to connect any way that would serve.
Yes, definitely go check out all of her good stuff. She's got a lot of great stuff on her website, and you can always just go to barenakedradio.com and click on Natalie's show, and under her show notes, you'll see all of her social media, her website links. So go there and definitely check her out. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn.
It's been such a joy talking with you. Like I said, I could talk forever, but I know people have other stuff to do. But so
I know. Go, people. Be free. Live your most dreamed
when you
life.
publish the book, we'll have you back on and we can talk more about the sex.
Oh my God, I love that.
All right. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thanks, honey. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Bare Naked Radio. We invite you to join us in the Naked Soul Tribe on Facebook and sound off about this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you connect with your host at Dawn Gluskin on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All show notes and links are accessible on barenakedradio.com.